I work in Chinese metaphysics.
Mm.
There are what are called the five arts in Chinese metaphysics. And they include Chinese medicine, massage, herbs, acupuncture, and geomancy, which is Feng Shui. And even in those categories, you get sort of subcategories, if you will, things like face reading and divination using the I Ching and 4 pillars of destiny. So that's really what I do. I work in as many of the tools in Chinese metaphysics as I can to help people with the things that they are struggling with. So typically, really what I do is I help people who are ambitious and are also feeling like something's off in their life. So a lot of times people are coming to me because they're a little intuitive, something doesn't feel right, they can't put their finger on it, and they're starting to look around and trying to figure out how to get through a situation. There's always a tipping point where you like, I'm done doing all the things I've done before, I have to do something different. And so then they're looking for someone they can trust to get some clarity on what's going on and how to move forward, either around or through or whatever they've got going on, so that they can confidently adjust and go through life confidently. That's what we want, right? We want freedom, we want to have options, and we want to deal with whatever life throws at us in a way that we can get through successfully. So that's what I do in Chinese metaphysics. I use the tools in Feng Shui and Chinese astrology and divination systems to help people get clarity and talk with them about what's going on so that they can move forward.
So what got you into all this? Because it's not something where I guess you kind of wake up and like, yes, I'm going to go into Chinese medicine and go through all that.
For sure, because I'm from Ohio. I'm like a nice Jewish girl from Ohio. And how does that happen? Because I was a little bit of a weird kid. And when I look back on my journey, I remember moving my furniture around a lot as a kid in my bedroom. And my dad still lives in that house that I basically grew up in. We moved there when I was 5. And so I basically grew up in that house, and that was my bedroom. And I would change my bed and move my desk and put the thing over there. And then that changed. Well, I mean, where was my stereo going to go this year? Like things change, right? So
yeah,
I moved things around a lot, and I didn't really understand why. And I think that my dad was just like, whatever you want to do, that's fine. And then once I got away from out of college, and college was hard because you can't really, like, you're living in a dorm and you get like one place for your bed, and that's pretty hard. But once I left Ohio and I moved to California, I got into like the self-help world in my early 20s. Like I think I read every self-help book that there could be. I was into Reiki and just anything I could get my hands on to help myself understand myself better and be better and grow and evolve. And in that process, I know I got my hands on a couple of Feng Shui books, and I was like, oh, Feng Shui, this is really interesting. Tried to do it myself. And the short version of the story is that in that process, I was with a company, and they moved me from the East Coast out to Phoenix, Arizona. And I didn't have a good experience once I moved into my new house, my first house in Phoenix. I didn't understand what was happening, because everything initially was going really well. The company liked me. I was growing. Like I thought I was going to be there forever. I worked in college admissions. Like I thought I was moving up in the company. And once I got into this house, things fell apart very quickly. And it was sort of like, you've been in these situations where it has a life of its own, which just feels like it's got its own momentum, and you can't stop it. Like anything that you do, you're trying to put the brakes on this, pardon my language, the shitstorm that's happening, and you just can't seem to figure out what's happening. And so at that point, you just have to, it's like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. Like just jump, you'll hit the ground eventually, and then you'll pick yourself up. So I changed courses, right? I was like, I'm out of here. I got out of that situation very quickly into a different role in the company. And when I hit the ground, I was like I remember sitting in my house on the couch, like looking around in my house going, what happened? Like, what happened? And maybe it's the house, because we had just moved in a few months ago, knowing that a little bit about Feng Shui. I was like, I wonder if it's the house. So I hired somebody I hired who was my first teacher, and she came in and she gave me a list of things to do, and I'm very task oriented. So she was like, do these things. And I did them, and things started to feel better. And I was like, well, this is cool. If I can do this, anybody can do this. So then I started to study. I really started to study. I was still at my day job. I stayed at that company for another 10 years, like still doing a day job, but I was working and practicing and studying. And I did private mentoring with my teacher for a year and a half. And I had convinced myself that I was going to stay at that job because I made a lot of money. Like the Feng Shui was really like, I was testing stuff. I was doing things with Feng Shui. I was using these powerful classical formulas, and they were working. So much so that I was like, well, I'm making a ton of money, so I guess I'm going to stay here and I'll just do this on the side, even though I would come home crying like on a regular basis. Like I hated that job. I was really, really, really good at it, but I was really unhappy. And it, I made a lot of money. So I knew what was coming down the pipeline because I also do Chinese astrology. So I was watching what was happening at the company. I was looking at my astrology chart. And so I knew that it was coming, that, my time was coming up. And the day that we all got laid off, like it was a massive layoff. Like it wasn't like I got fired. The whole building it was like a massive sweep of people. And rightfully so, there are people who are like sobbing, they're crying, they're like losing their livelihood, and I get it. But on my end, because I saw it coming, I was like, it's my day. I'm free. I get to go do Feng Shui full time. It was like the kick in the butt that the universe needed to give me, because otherwise I would have stayed. And so that was the end of that. And I've been doing Feng Shui full time since then. That's the short version of my story.
So I got to ask you, what's the difference between, I guess, because I'm very noob when it comes to Feng Shui. It's the fact that what's the difference between that and, let's say, something like a Reiki healing or Reiki, like using the energy around us? Or is that the same, or is it just a different concept of it?
It's like, I don't know, apples and kiwi fruit, maybe, or like they're completely disparate practices. So Feng Shui, what is Feng Shui? So we were in an elevator and we only had a couple minutes to talk about Feng Shui. So to me, Feng Shui is a support system for our lives. So it's the Chinese art and science of bringing harmony and balance to any environment. So when our physical environment is supporting us, then we feel more nurtured and more cared for. And when we're in that environment, when our physical environment is supporting us, it's just easier to achieve the things that we want in life, like well-being, abundance, good health, good relationships. You pick a goal that you have, in the human experience, and there is an aspect of Feng Shui that can support you in that. We're talking about this ancient practice. We're living in a world of technology. Thousands of years ago, when Feng Shui was starting to be recorded and developed and understood, it was really survival of the fittest. It was, which side of the mountain should I live on? Is it windy over here? Is it sunny over here? Will my crops grow better over here? If I live on this area near where the water is, will I be healthy? Will I be prosperous? Will I have children? Like all of the things that are involved with just surviving for hundreds and thousands of years, right? Being recorded, tested, formulas. And so this is very deep in the culture in ancient China. And the secrets were reserved for emperors and the upper echelons of that kind of society, intending to teach these emperors how to keep their power and literally run an empire, gain wealth, gain power, gain stability, achieve their goals. And in our modern world, that those secrets are not reserved for the upper echelon anymore. And that has largely to do with the Cultural Reformation in China, because so many people, it was like a diaspora, so many people fled and they took all the secrets, but it's a little bit like a family secret. So it's sort of like every Italian grandmother has the best recipe for meatballs and spaghetti, and every family is going to do it a little bit differently for one reason or another. And they have a secret recipe. And that's very much what Feng Shui is about. You will find a lineage, what's called a lineage, where the tradition is passed down orally and where you train with a master and they give you the family secrets. So a lot of times you can get someone come in to do Feng Shui. You can get 10 different Feng Shui practitioners to come in and they'll give you 10 different answers.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the formula is different, or their perspective is different, or their method is different. So with Reiki, that's not my area of expertise, even though I did train in Reiki and I've done a couple levels. It's not my jam. Really, with Reiki, you're talking about energy that you are cultivating and using as a healing modality to transfer to another person or another being, or even could be a space. But in Feng Shui, we're using the energy of the physical environment first, the exterior, seeing how the chi flows, where it comes from, the mountains, the roads, the undulation of the hills and the valleys, and the position of the property and how it's oriented on the land. Then when we know how that energy is being accessed by the property, we can look at the interior path of the energy inside the house to see how it's affecting people on the inside. So in my practice, I work with the people, the building, and the timing. So it's really a three-pronged, if you will, approach to Feng Shui, because I need to understand what's happening on the exterior, how the energy is tapping or connecting to the property, how it is entering the property, and then the people who are inside the property, how they're interacting with it, because you have an energy pattern, I have my own energy pattern based on when we're born. It's like a date and time stamp. Like the moment you take your first breath, that's your date and time stamp of the energy pattern that you are fated, if you will, to experience. And then when we couple that with the right timing, then it really helps with the Feng Shui to light up your results. Because with Feng Shui, it's like location, location, location. And with timing, it's like timing is everything. And when you put that together, you get some pretty amazing results.
Interesting. This is actually quite interesting, because a lot of the people that I've mentioned, that I spoke to, they are very energy drawn people, internally and external energy, while yours really focus on the physical aspect of things and changing your surrounding to one, make your life more happier and bring the energy in that way. And I feel like me saying the word energy in reference to Feng Shui is kind of somewhat, it's not good. I think I'm not too sure if I should be using that word for Feng Shui.
It's not part of our culture, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Energy, we can try to describe it, but it's a very much something that you experience. Usually people know when their life is not going right. When your life is sort of mediocre, you could have what's called mixed luck, which is sort of like your Feng Shui is okay sometimes, not so good other times. But when things are really bad, when you're dealing with something catastrophic, a major disease, a divorce, a bankruptcy, like significant illness, betrayal, like, really, really bad things that you cannot seem to get out from, that's when it's not just that your life chart isn't any good. It's never one thing. It's usually a couple things. So it's easier to feel when things, the energy or the arrangement, or you're misaligned, right? We'll say misaligned with supportive energy. So if you're not aligned with something that is supporting you, then you're going to feel off balance. So you're going to feel like things are not going your way. It's a little bit trying to be on a river in a boat, and you want to go with the stream. You want to go down with the stream and just let it carry you. But when you're coming up against obstacles, you're like rowing against the stream, and you don't really want to do that. That's not fun.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course not. and I've done that. It's a good exercise, though. Don't get me wrong.
Right. And well, so people who are up to a challenge, usually my clients who are goal oriented are okay with the climb, right? So these are clients who are self-motivated. They are using Feng Shui as a piece of the puzzle to get where they want to go in life, and they're not relying on it as a crutch. They're still doing affirmations, they're getting coaching, they're partnering, they're doing all the right things in their lives that they need to do, and understanding that this is a piece of the puzzle. Where was I going with this? That they know that there's a destination that they want to go to, and they're okay with the climb. Like, you want to get to the top, right? But there's always a climb, And the truth is, with Feng Shui, and Eastern perspective is it's never done.
Mm-hmm.
Because once it's done, you're dead, right? So it's okay to want things. It's okay for your goals to change. It's okay to adjust as you evolve because it's never done. And when you accept that it's never done, when things change, it doesn't feel so crappy. Because when you're using good feng shui and things are changing, you get support. And it doesn't feel like so catastrophic.
So what is so if someone, whoever's listening on this, and you mentioned earlier who's the audience, if someone's like, you know what, what's the first thing that they should change in their life to generate or some form of feng shui in their life? Because I know like a lot of people, like they look at the arrangement you mentioned a few things, arrangement in the house, arrangement in like an office space. Would you recommend that doing first in your practice, or would you recommend changing something else?
That's a good question. Actually, I think there's a lot of, well, how do I want to say this? There's a lot of talk on social media and out in the world how feng shui has been, I think, trivialized and made to be so easily consumable that
yes.
People think, oh, I can just do this one little thing and my life will be better. And a lot of times people call me and go, I want to change the color of my drapes, or I want to know, what color to paint my room. And that's going to be good feng shui. And that's not the kind of feng shui that I practice. I work with energetics. I don't work with aesthetics. I'm not a designer. I help you understand where the hot spots are in your space. So if you are working from home, like most of us are these days, right? And you have a Wi-Fi router and you have a big property, you're going to go to the part of your property where that Wi-Fi connection is the strongest, where it's the most stable, where you can rely on it and you're not going to be interrupted, especially if you have to do something important. And that's very much what we do with the energetic component of feng shui. We help you identify, or at least I do in my practice, other people are doing other stuff, but in my practice, I help you understand where these sort of energy hotspots are in your property so that you can use them more often and feel more supported. But a lot of times what we see in the media is the first thing people say is to declutter. You need to get rid of your stuff. Well, and I don't necessarily disagree with this, right? Like the closet of life has limited space. And so you must throw some stuff out now and again in order to refresh your energy. And if the universe said, I have a gift for you and I'm going to drop it from a helicopter into your house and it's going to be massive, you're immediately going to want to make space for it to arrive. And so there is definitely something to be said for being mindful about how much stuff we have. I mean, the truth is the storage industry is like one of the largest industries in America because we have so much stuff that doesn't work, that's broken, that doesn't fit, it's out of date, it just reminds you of someone you don't like, it makes you feel guilty, things that drain your energy. And so we really need to learn how to deal with our clutter. And like home stagers know this, but it is an important concept in feng shui that what we're dealing with is emptiness versus fullness. So when we can create some emptiness, we can fill ourselves up with things that we want. So that, I mean, although it sounds a little bit cliche, I do think it's something that people can do to create a more positive energy flow in a house, because you need to create a pathway for it. Now, if you are somebody who's running into a situation where you have a room in your house and it has become the dumping ground for all of your stuff, that is potentially a sign of some other issue that would be useful to call for feng shui, because sometimes you just have a room where you just can't, you look at it, you can't even figure out where to begin, you don't know where to start. And that is something else that can be going on with the feng shui. But if you can tackle some of it, it can make a big difference.
I love this because I do not want to name names, but I have someone that I know, and I know they'll be listening to this and they'll be like, damn you. But I know someone that's they like to keep a lot of things. Yeah. And we call the person a professional hoarder. And I asked them, it's like, just get rid of it. just get rid of it. And they're struggling with getting rid of these things because, again, there's memories, there's,
Right.
oh, I might need it. And I'm just like,
Right.
it's been in the box for like 15 years. Just
Oh
get rid of
God.
it.
Yeah. I mean, it is very much psychological. I mean, a lot of times our stuff is psychological, and we have so many material things compared to the rest of the world. And here, at least in the US, a lot of times our spaces are much bigger than like Europe and Asia. Like our spaces are huge, and we feel like we need to fill them because we're also not so in touch with our emotions anymore. And we're really disconnected from nature. And so trying to go through like trash bag therapy, where you're sorting through your stuff and you've got like a pile for stuff that you're going to keep. It works. It makes you feel good. It functions. It makes your life easier. It's beautiful. Then you have a pile of trash, it just like, it doesn't fit. It's broken. It's disrepair. It's not working. It's toys from kids that don't even live in the house anymore. Like, why do you have your kids' toys? They're not going to give it to their kids. They're not doing it. And then there's this like tricky pile, right? That's sort of dodgy. That's like, well, someone might be upset if I get rid of this. They're going to know they gave this to me for my wedding. And if I don't keep it, they're never coming to your house. And you've not opened this gift for the 10 years that you've been married. Like, somebody else can use this, right? It's this energy of indecision and confusion and ambivalence. And we also sort of feel like maybe I'll need it someday, or like it's valuable. And you just don't want these energies in your life. So like outer clutter is the equivalent to inner clutter. And really, these people need a lot of compassion. So be nice to this person.
It's hard, okay? It's hard, but anyways, the person knows who they are, and definitely will be yelling at me when this video comes.
Well, here's what I would say to this, and I've said this to my clients too. Like, do this trash bag therapy. You've got this dodgy pile of stuff, and what I would say is to put this dodgy pile in a box and put a date on it, and put a note on your calendar for 6 months later. And if you have not opened this box in 6 months, you've proven yourself that it is not a need. It is not something you need. I just went through this myself recently because we had moved and there was a couple boxes that were sitting there from our move that had not been touched. And I would walk around the house and I'd be like, oh man, these boxes, I'm feeling guilty. Like, it's stressful. It was on my mind and it was on my heart. And once I opened this box, it was like very freeing because I was like, I didn't even remember it was in this box. And then I opened it up. I was like, I don't need this. Like, this has got to go. I took it to consignment. I took it to donation. Like, people can use this stuff. I'm obviously not using it because it's been there for a really long time since we moved. So it's not a need. And I think that you can really liberate yourself from material things and you can create space for more of what you want. And actually, after I did this is a true story. So I do this every now and then. Like, I'm not trying to be a minimalist, but I'm very conscious these days of like how much stuff I have. And it is a process. Like, I'm not saying it's magic fairy dust, but in my own experience, every time I do this, I get a client. Like, I'm just making room for more of what I want. And so I know for my own business, my clients are very much a reflection of me. So I do a lot of my own work. I mean, I do a lot of work to make sure that I'm ready for the right client. And so almost all the time, like, I clean something up and client appears. So yeah, it totally works.
A few more questions I got to ask you is, and this is where I guess people will look at you in a sense when they see, like you mentioned, a Jewish person going into a Chinese practice.
Yeah.
Have you ever got clients or people are like, well, why are you going into this? You're not Chinese and so and so. How do you deal with that?
Well, first of all, it's not a religion, right? This is a cultural practice, and really we're dealing with the energy of nature. So when I look at it in that lens, I feel like it's okay, right? Reiki is, you could make the argument that it's a Japanese energy practice. Like, what are people around the world doing with Reiki? Or why are we doing Chinese herbs? Or, why are people doing huasca? Like, you're going to South America and you're doing all of these cultural things that you have no attachment to. But we're now in an environment where information is so available. And the idea that we are a part of humanity, and that there's no one perspective in the world that has cornered the market on what's right. And so, of course, as humans, we're going to be curious. We're going to try new things. We're going to try to live better and be better so that we can have better relationships. We can be more available for our communities, for our spouses, for our families, for our clients, for, you know, whatever it is that we're trying to achieve in life. And if something resonates, great. And the information is available, use it. So for me, I feel like I know my chart well. I also know that I'm here to work as in a healing capacity. And I feel like a lot of what I'm doing is making myself as a resource to help people on their healing journey. So people are going to do that in different ways. Some people do it as an orthodontist. Some people do it as a heart surgeon. Some people do it as a pediatric nurse. Some people do it as a reflexologist. Some people do it as an acupuncturist. I'm just doing it in Feng Shui and Chinese metaphysics. So I really know that this is not the first time I've done this. Like when I was working with my teacher, my master teacher, I was doing private mentoring with her, and she played an audio of her teacher. So this is the Grand Master who is our lineage, right? And he's singing a poem, and she plays me this audio, and I burst into tears. And it felt like I was listening to a grandparent sing to me. I was so emotional. And she was like, you must have heard this before in another life. And really, when I started working with her, I picked up the concepts very, very quickly. She was like, I've never seen anybody pick this up so quick. And it's really just because it was almost like a remembering of stuff that I already knew. And I believe that. I mean, that's just a belief that I have, that we have karma, and energy from previous life experiences that we carry into the life that we live now, and we can address that and heal on so many different levels. And Feng Shui and Chinese metaphysics is a path to that.
That's awesome,
in my opinion.
Have you been to China before?
I've not been to China. Well, I've not been to mainland China, but I have been to Taiwan, and it's amazing. A few years ago, I went on a extensive spiritual journey trip to Taiwan and went to these amazing temples and got to experience from Feng Shui from a whole different perspective. Like, I live in the desert. We have mountains, but this is a space that is like lush and green and ancient, and it was really, really incredible in a totally different way to be able to see and understand Feng Shui from a whole different perspective. Because here in the US or in the West, our association with these concepts is really new, like in comparison to the rest of the world. Like even Europe has gotten into these concepts much earlier than we did here in the United States.
Yep.
And so it was really a wonderful experience to understand the roots of Feng Shui. There's Feng Shui for the living, like we are alive, and we as people, we live in our homes and our properties and buildings and businesses, and we live a life. And there's a whole other practice called Yin Feng Shui, which is about burial and about positioning a grave in a very specific way to help benefit the energy of the ancestors that come after this person who has passed. And that's a really beautiful experience to be able to see, because it's not something that we practice here. And to see how that's honored, and how that see how it plays out, because these have been done for thousands of years, so you can see the lineage and you can see what happens to people. It's really interesting. Like there was a case study of a very famous grave that has been well studied and well researched and well documented, and also was in an earthquake, and the grave shifted. And then you could really document what happened to the family after the grave shifted, because a lot of these formulas are very precise. So when I work in my practice, even Feng Shui for the living, I use a tool called a lopan, and it's a Chinese compass, and it's accurate to a half a degree. So some of these formulas are very, very specific. And so when the alignment of the object, the house, the property, the gravestone, that the yin house, if you will, is adjusted, then the destiny changes, of the ancestors, the energy pattern changes. It's really fascinating.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go on a couple personal things, because I love watching Japanese movies and even Chinese movies as well. And the biggest thing I find with them is their culture is very family oriented. It's very lineage. It's, hey, my great grandfather, and they have a lot of respect for that. And no offense to anyone that is not from that culture, but it really is embedded within them. And like you mentioned earlier, it's the fact that you see these massive houses in China or even Japan, and to your point, it's very empty. And like they have it literally, they only have the things that they need. And when we come to even Europe is pretty much the same way too. I know a lot of people in Europe, they go to the market like almost every day just to get like fresh meat, fresh bread. Nothing's wasted. When we come to the more of the Western society of life and mentality of things, like you mentioned earlier, we have a lot of storage. And with that, I think is my personal opinion. We need to start getting away from the storage. And really focusing on the things that we are lacking, as in whether it might be the energy, it's not really the energy, it's more of the internal healing and the external healing and arrangement of our life. And being more minimalistic could actually, I think, my personal opinion, again, breathes life into you, and it breathes life into the things around you, which will then make you more productive. In honesty, with the whole pandemic that's going on, I think a lot of this stuff could have been avoided. Honestly, I think it's a bloody joke, but that's just me. With that being said, it's just the fact that I understand the concept of, I'm starting to now understand the concept of Feng Shui a little bit better. And it's not, and you're right on what you mentioned, there are people that believe that, yeah, I got to arrange things a lot, and therefore it brings in that positivity within their life and makes them more at peace and make them feel more at home in that sense. And like you mentioned earlier about the Wi-Fi setting, yeah, it'll be more frustrating if you set up an office in an area when you're further away, because you're going to be dealing with every single day when you're trying to run a report or download this or watch TV or record this or whatever, because it's much slower versus someone that's more closer to that the Wi-Fi signal, because then they'll be more happier because everything is flowing the way they want it to. So yes, and I like understanding that concept. Yeah, of course, I believe in that stuff. And with me, I hate keeping like personal things with me for like years upon years. Like if I see something, I don't put a date on it, but I know if I haven't used it, it's gone. It's automatically it's just gone. And with me, I prefer that way because one, if I have no use for it, why keep it? And it's not even about an energy thing. It's just how I am technically. The minimalist way of things I have, it's funny because I actually bought a watch a couple years ago, and it just has a minute hand and the hour hand. It doesn't have a second hand at all. I'm almost like, this is very minimalistic. And I looked at it, I'm like, it's simple. It's a very simple way of living. But I believe the more simple way you live, the more happier you are, because you realize you understand the concept of needs and want. And I think that's strong in society now, is the fact that we sometimes mix those two aspects of things. Oh yes, I need a car. Like, do you really need a car, or can you be okay with doing public transportation? Or can you do something with riding a bike? Those things that with public transportation, you interact with people. You have a possibility of interacting with people. With riding a bike or using some form of I guess, transportation besides public transportation, you're able to get that exercise and that fresh air. When you're in a car, yes, but the thing with being in a car is you're very isolated, especially if you're by yourself. Yeah, you might get there faster, but then a lot of people, I find, they rush to a job that they're not happy to. and it's pretty funny how that works, because there's a lot of people out there
I did that for years. I commuted for over an hour to a job that I didn't like.
Exactly. And we do that, and then we're there, we complain about the job that we have, and we don't make those changes in our life to actually find that happiness. But again, it's like you mentioned, it's like, well, that job is giving me 6 figures, and hey, why am I going to leave a job that's giving me 6 figures? But if you're miserable, then is that really a sign of success in a sense? Is that sign of happiness and peace and within the things around you? Again, having those 6 figures is great, but if you're not benefiting from it, and those benefits doesn't mean, hey, I'm going to get a brand new Ferrari or something like that. its benefits shows that, hey, do I have enough time to do the things that I like? Am I able to buy a more comfortable bed? But like things like that are more, I think, more beneficial than anything else in this world. It's that comfort that you have while changing your surroundings and making those small changes in your life to actually bring in peace and happiness within yourself. So it's been an eye-opener to be honest. And I wrote down, but I'm going to replay what you said, but
yeah,
I don't remember it. You might remember it. You said the closet of life, and I forgot the end of that. It was very
good. Yeah. The closet of life has limited space.
Yes.
So you must throw stuff out now and again. The closet of life has limited space. It's a little bit like, if you also think about it as a glass of water, people go, oh, is the glass half full or is it half empty? Here's my idea of the glass. The glass needs to be empty in order for it to be filled. So if you're thirsty, drink, empty the glass, and then allow more water to come into the glass so that you can drink again. We don't stop breathing after we have a breath. This is now we're getting really philosophical, but
I love it.
We need to breathe. We take a breath. We exhale. We need to breathe again. We need to breathe again. So energy is always moving. So my business is called Feng Shui in Motion because I really believe in this concept that energy is always moving and things are constantly changing. People are generally really afraid of change because they don't know and they feel really uncertain. And a lot of times we're using material things to soothe instead of really addressing the emotions underneath. This is why clutter really is a psychological issue. If we can use the energy in our spaces to give us support, then it's easier to achieve the things that we want and get help in making change in any aspect. Maybe it's changing a relationship. Maybe it's changing a business, changing job, building a family, moving. I mean, maybe you want to go travel the world. Okay. Like I have a client who bless his heart, called me just a couple weeks ago saying that he wanted help with Feng Shui, but we did a discovery call. And in the discovery call, what I said to him was that it was not that he had an issue with Feng Shui. He needed clarity in other areas of his life. So my recommendation was actually to do a Chinese astrology reading. And in the reading, it became very clear that he needed to move around, that part of the reason that he was unhappy with his space, thinking that he needed Feng Shui, wasn't that the space wasn't working for him, but that in his chart, he needs to move, he needs to travel, he needs to explore, he needs to not be necessarily tied down to one space. And so that is also a component to why I'm looking at Chinese astrology in this practice, because it's not always one thing. Usually it's going to be a few things. Like my teacher always said, people always want the whole enchilada. Sometimes all you get are the nachos. And when you know what those nachos are, you can start to work with them and start to evolve and grow in incremental ways. There are people who have charts that are happy to make a change super quick. Like, I don't like my job, I'm out of here, I'm gonna go change a job, no problem. I'm calling a headhunter tomorrow and I'm gonna have a new job by next week. There are some people who are like, no, I can't do that. I need to get into a company that has advancement and growth potential. I'm gonna get in early so that I can grow as the company grows in increments. And so everybody's a little bit different, and that's why you need to know someone's Chinese astrology, at least in my opinion, when you're doing Feng Shui, so you can help that person understand how to evolve, how to grow and how to change, and what first or right next steps they should take to get where they want to go. And then I work with my clients over time. So I do an annual update with all my clients every year so that we can make small incremental changes. I can look at someone's chart and see for 10 years, this is the sort of the overarching energy or the overarching experience that you might have for 10 years, the energy pattern that is working in your chart. But every year is going to be different because every year the energy changes and there's layers and layers that need to be looked at. And some issues aren't always resolved quickly. Like sometimes I have clients who are dealing with lawsuits that are not going to be resolved for 10 years because they're massive, like big issues. You can resolve a legal issue in a few months, great, let's get it done. But sometimes you can't. And so I can see when it's going to get resolved and you just go on, live the rest of your life and deal with it in 8 years when it's going to get resolved. I don't know if that makes any sense. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I can go on and on about this.
I love
clearly.
it. This is, again, why I love this style. It's that the conversation can go anywhere and everywhere. And this is why I love it, because I see your brain is just, it's those motions and the wheels are going and you're like, yeah. And then you're just like, okay. It's fantastic. I love
Hopefully
this.
it sounds like a continuous train of thought that actually takes you on a journey, that it's not just disparate ideas that are out there floating around.
To be honest with you, this whole conversation really is an eye opener. Because again, it's those things that personally I look at my life. I love that, whether it's half full or half empty. And to your point, if it's water, if it's beer, if it's juice, if it's whatever I feel like it, I'm gonna drink the damn thing. I don't care. As I said, I'm really against it. And if I want to throw something like and just throw like some knowledge into it, I've always looked at it as whether the glass half full or half empty, that space that's in like the space above the water, I've always looked at that as potential. And the stuff that I had, like the water itself, I've always looked at it as this is where I currently am. But to get there, I could always keep pouring. And if it overflows, that's even better. That just means my potential is just that much greater.
Okay. And so Chinese astrology, Chinese metaphysics concept is you got to drain that glass at some point in order to create space for more.
Yeah. So my space for more is just let the whole thing flow over, and wherever it spills, that's my more. I've always had that concept, and I've always went against what's it called? The theory of, the sky's my limit. And I've always got away from that, because I'm just like, you're limiting yourself to space, to the sky itself. And I've always said, well, outer space is my limit. Therefore, it's endless. It's
infinite. Yeah.
Infinite, it's unknown. Therefore, I've always said, well, everyone's like, oh, the sky's the limit. I'm like, no. The sky is just the starting of my potential. And outer space is where I choose to stay and choose to have my potential. And that's where I have that same concept of that same glass, is just like fill it up, because when it reaches the brim, that's my sky. Keep pouring more, that's my potential. And like, well, it's going to go everywhere. I'm like, that's the point. I do not want to limit myself to a glass. And that's why I go against this whole glass half full and half empty concept. And hopefully that it's just how I am.
That's great. And if that works for you, that's awesome. Now go clear out some clutter in your house so that you can have more.
I have barely anything. It's fantastic. I've literally
there's a junk drawer. There's a pile of papers. There's something
and I'll tell you, I have one box.
There you go.
No. There's a reason why I'm keeping this box. And there's one reason why I have a box which I have every single birthday card, every single Christmas card in that box. And I've had it since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And I've every single card, everything that everyone has written to me about me. And that's me. And I've always said, give the flowers while you're alive, because it makes no sense why people spend $1 million on flowers on people's funeral, because that person that's in the box will never experience these flowers. Yeah. And I've always said, hey, if you see someone that you like, or if you even just like coworkers, friends, give them flowers. And it could be either physical flowers or just saying, hey, guess what? I appreciate you as a human being. Because I find at funerals, a lot of people say like these fantastic things about these people. But when they're alive, they're like, buddy, I hate you so much. It's just like, yeah. So that's why that's the only box and anything that I have that's like outdated. Everything I have, it's very brand new, or I've used it on a very everyday basis. And with that being said, I've always said, like, when I die, bury me with this box, because if someone decides to dig me up or move my grave for any bloody reason, they could like open up and like, back in like 2005 on Christmas Day, this person said, hey, this guy's a pretty awesome guy.
That's a great story. I love that. It's a good concept.
That's it. And that's the oldest thing I have. Like, I hate clutter. And it bugs me when I see clutter. I'm just like, I just find like I could just put something else in there. But even that, I'm just like, I like to just, even when I see something like brand new, and let's say a brand new car, I'm just like, I don't need a brand new car, but let me get a used car, because I'll save a ton of money on there. But I know a lot of people, like, they go for those brand new cars to, one, look like they are I guess it shows to me personally, a lot of people go and buy brand new cars for multiple reasons, but I find the biggest reason is just a showcase that, hey, guess what? I have a bunch of money there if I could buy a brand new car. And you're just like, but you're just buying really just four wheels for free to go from point A to point B to a job that you hate. It was just like, what's the point in that? So that's my thing and my take on that. I do not know how much time I have with you, but I just want to touch base on one thing with you before we go or end this.
Sure.
You keep mentioning Chinese astrology. So I must ask you a question on that.
Okay.
Are you against horoscopes that you see like in newspapers and so on and so forth? Does that go against, I assume that goes against Chinese astrology because it's completely different, or do you find some similarity within it?
So Western astrology, I'm a Leo, I'm a Libra, I'm a Capricorn, my sun is rising, Mercury, blah, blah, blah. This is my limited understanding because it's not an area that I've studied, but it's based on what is visible in the sky. It's been based on it's a system that was created based on what was observable, right? Chinese astrology is actually based on everything that makes up the universe. So in Chinese metaphysics, Chinese astrology, one of the key concepts is yin and yang, the polarity of light and dark, full and empty, black and white, all of those binomial concepts. Another concept is what's called the 5 elements. This is often talked about on social media. And the 5 elements are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal.
Okay.
And these elements are also broken down into everything in Chinese, the 5 arts: Chinese medicine, acupuncture, geomancy, massage. And it also encompasses time. So there are 2 calendars that are used in Chinese culture. There's a solar calendar and a lunar calendar. The lunar calendar is literally based off the moon, right? So it changes with the phases of the moon.
Yep.
And it dictates when important things happen: festivals, events, Chinese New Year. So a lot of times Chinese New Year will vacillate on different dates. The solar calendar is like a farmer's almanac. It's based on the sun. And so it's very specific and it is very reliable, and it only vacillates by a few hours really every couple of years. And so with the solar calendar, February 4th is almost always Chinese New Year using the solar calendar. And so this calendar is called the Tong Shu, and the Tong Shu tells us this energy pattern of the 5 elements based on when you're born. So I mentioned earlier that you have an energy stamp when you're born. So when you take your breath, these are the energy patterns that make up your life, and we can lay out on a very specific map to give us an idea of forecast what you can expect to experience based on your personal energy pattern. So with my understanding is that with Western astrology, there's like maybe 500 different type of charts that are available. And with Chinese astrology, there's over 13 million different variations. So it's extremely specific and extremely unique. So even people who are born on the same day or even at the same time can still have very, very different lives because the environment that they're born into, the choices that they make. So with Chinese astrology, one of the foundational concepts is what are called the 3 lucks: heaven luck, earth luck, and human luck. So heaven luck is what you're born with. It's what you're fated to experience, the family you're born into, the experiences that happen early in life. Earth luck is the Feng Shui. So we have about a third of this configuration of 3 points. So Feng Shui can help with about a third of that. And then human luck, sometimes it's called man luck, but it's human luck. This is your free will. These are the choices you make, the places that you put yourself, the experiences that you choose to have. So really, when you think about Chinese metaphysics, you have control of about 2/3 or so of the things that you experience in life. So from my perspective, I have found Chinese astrology to be extremely accurate because it can very specifically tell you when to do things, when not to do things, when to get married, when to have a child, when to change a job, when to sell your house. Things that are very practical can be used. So, and here's how it was used in ancient China, right? Because we had talked about this being very much about a lineage, the grandmother would be the one who had the farmer's almanac, and you would go to your grandmother and say, "Grandma, I want to propose marriage to the girl down the street. Like, when should I do that?" and she tells you exactly when to do it, because timing based on your birth chart will tell you when you're more likely to have an opportunity for that to get accepted. So when we're talking about all these things in metaphysics, we're talking about opportunity. Money does not fall out of the sky. You still have to work. You have to do stuff in order to get money. And so if people go, oh, can you help me win the lottery? No, lottery is chance and mathematics. You're using Feng Shui and you're using metaphysics and you're aligning yourself with a supportive energy so you can have opportunity. And that, I think, is very much the difference, at least in my experience with Western astrology versus Chinese astrology, is that Western astrology sort of does a good job of describing what they say is happening, but it doesn't always do such a good job of explaining
opportunities
and forecasting what your options are and how to get to your goal. At least that's my experience. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who's listening to this who does Western astrology and is some amazing person and would have a lot to say about my chart. I've just found that this is very specific to my life. And that's Chinese astrology is one aspect. There's another aspect called Qimendunjia. So Chinese astrology is 4 pillars. It's called the 4 pillars of destiny. You're born in a year, month, day, and a time, an hour. And that gives you heavenly stems and earthly branches that map out and 10-year luck pillars of your life. Another branch of that is something called Qimendunjia. Qimendunjia is the mysterious doors hiding the Jia, which is the leader. And it's like Sun Tzu's art of warcraft. And so that's originally where this came from, which is to battle and to think strategically and to win. And when you look at these charts, doing a life reading, like an astrology life reading based on someone's birth time, it is fascinatingly accurate. And when you tie it to karma, when you go, someone's dealing with a health issue, someone's dealing with a legal issue, someone's dealing with a relationship issue, and addressing the karmic aspects that are vivid in the chart, it can really help make people shift and heal things in their life so they can grow. I've just found it to be really accurate and amazing, because people go to Chinese restaurants and they look at the placemat and they go, oh, I was born in the year of the rabbit. And then read the description and go, well, it's sort of like me, but not so much like me. And that kind of, but not really. And that's because not only are you born in a animal year, sign year, but it also has one of the 5 elements. So you could be a wood rabbit, you could be a water rabbit, a fire rabbit. And that's just the year. Then you have a month, a day, and an hour. So if you're only looking at the year and you're only looking at the animal, you're not even getting 25% of the picture of your chart and the things that make up who you are, because we can really tell personality characteristics, traits, talents, gifts, industries. I could go on and on. It's so helpful and fascinating. And it was actually one of the things that helped me in my self-help journey, because it helped me really understand myself, especially in the business world, because I knew what my talents and gifts were. I knew that I could focus on the stuff that I was really good at, and the stuff that I wasn't so good at, I could ask for help, where I would just go like, oh, I'm not going to do that. Like, I am not a night person. Like, I'm a morning person. People who do work at night, like, bless their little souls, because I'm not doing that. Great. And so I just focus on the stuff that I'm really good at. And that can be really helpful for someone's self-esteem, for their self-worth, for excelling and getting closer to their goals. Like, the reason that I was part of the reason I was really good at that job is because I have a natural talent. And then when I started figuring out what the nuances were about that talent, I could really highlight those and do more of that to get more of what I wanted. And so it can be extremely satisfying, and comforting and nurturing to be able to say, to proudly say and confidently say, this is who I am. These are the things I do really well. I am not a gardener. I cannot grow things. I have a shirt that says sleep is my cardio. I am not very good at discipline and exercise. Like, I do not like to sweat and go run. Like, that's not my jam. So I know, where my strengths are, and I just play to those strengths. And sometimes just knowing that can help you remove obstacles.
I agree.
That's a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, I agree on that aspect, because I find I think a lot of failures that people are facing nowadays is that they're not strengthening their strength or playing on those strengths, and they want to become an entrepreneur but they don't
Not everybody
have
should be an entrepreneur.
which I fully agree with you on that aspect, 100%. And this is why I mentioned not everyone, and I find a lot of people, they go through a lot of tragedy and trauma and they become coaches. I'm just like, the problem that I have with that is when everyone decides to do that, not a lot of coaches want to be taught. A lot of people want to become authors. Not a lot of authors read books. And I say that because
love that.
And I say that because, and I'm not going against people. It's just how I am. And this is just, you want to throw a Chinese astrology on it or horoscope on that. It's just who I am. It's just, yeah. I go against a lot of things and I love it. Because
you rebel you.
But it makes me think about the other side of things. And I love that because, again, a lot of people, they want to be entrepreneurship, but they don't want to, they're either camera shy, they're introverts, they don't want to go out, and they're very lazy, and they don't want to and network, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but there's certain things you have to have. And they're like, well, I'm going to do it anyways. And they fail. And they're like, why me? And just like, no, it's just that you have to play with your strengths. Yeah. And you're absolutely right on that. It's just the fact that you don't see, for example, how, what's his face? Michael Jordan went and he's great at basketball. He tried baseball and he sucked at it. It's just, it's just how it is. You're not that great. Like, and I know Usain Bolt, really fast runner, tried soccer. I think he scored like 2 goals and he stopped because he knows it's just not his path. Yeah. A lot of people jump into things that because a lot of people around them, they try to convince them, or they have this big ego saying, I'm the greatest there is, the greatest there ever was. And they try these things and they just suck at it. And now the problem with that is that some of these people, they go at things that they think they're great at and they should be great at, and they suck at it, that now it like plays a part. And they're like, they become depressed. They hit that mental depression, mental health. They have anxiety now. And it's just like, well, it's your own fault. And it's just, and you're right on what you said on all that stuff. And that's why I'm loving this conversation. And it's those aspects and that people start to see and understand that life is life. And you have to really do the things that you enjoy, because I think that's the biggest thing. And that's one thing I'm starting to understand with Feng Shui. It's the fact that to get where you need to be, you need to, and honesty, you have to declutter, I think is important. And that's not just physical declutter. I think that's also internal declutter. Because again, I love the fact that you said the closet of life has limited space, and that's very true, because you can't keep shoving things into a closet and think they'll hold everything, because eventually the doors will burst. And they've always said, what's his face? Eminem always says, hey, tonight I'm going to be cleaning out my closet. And I think that's very important as well, that we need to keep and store the things that matter. And those are the things and the fact that a closet, yes, we have closets to sometimes to keep things stored in there, but we need to open that closet and take things out that'll be useful for us. Yeah. I find that things like that, you need to keep either in your back pocket for when those special times come, you're able to grab those things from your closet and be like, hey, guess what? I do have those skills. Let me show you my potential. But at the same time, I think keep a closet to make sure that, hey, this is let's say, again, the concept of my concept of the glass overflowing, and you have those things that are overflowing in your life that are good. And that's a big thing. Store them in a closet, because again, at some point they're going to be useful. And those are the things you should put in a closet, is those useful aspect of things that you will use eventually. Not, and I say the word loosely eventually, because it can't be 10 or 20 years down the street. It has to be like within the same year. And in honesty,
if it's physical. Right. But correct. I really encourage a lot of people to focus on education, because education can never be taken away from you. So a lot of times when people want to invest, depending on what's going on in their chart, we'll often say to them, take a class, go learn something, because it will help you build as you move forward. Like things that happened in our past influence our perception today. Mm-hmm. And so it's always something that you can carry with you.
Which I agree with you on that one, but I'm going to go against that. And I love it because the only reason why, because I did this one podcast and the person said, and I mentioned it, and it's like, it's great to reflect on your past, but not live in your past. And the biggest thing that he says was, when you're driving, you don't focus on the back window or your mirrors. You're always focusing on the front mirror, the front window, the front windshield. You never look at your back. You don't drive with your back mirror. I'm just like, that's very true. He's like, if you continue doing that, then you'll crash eventually. And that's why I've always said, always take a peek of the past, but never live in your past.
Sure. Your past is going to influence the choices that you make. So if you've had a crappy experience on the road of life, you might not buy a Ferrari. You might decide that you want to buy an SUV that can navigate more rough terrain because you are a little bit more of a conservative person. That's fine. And then with Chinese astrology, if you know that the road ahead of you is smoother, then maybe you're getting in a Volvo this year instead of using your SUV that will go a little bit faster. Maybe you're going to get into your sports sedan and go a little bit faster that year. But if you know the road ahead of you can be a little bit rocky 1 year or two, then that's the year you're going to get in your Hummer. Like you're definitely going to put chains on your tires and make sure that you're really safe as you go down the road. So it's going to at least inform you and give you information about how to make choices in the future. No, you're not always going to live in the past, but you are going to use it to inform your future.
Very true. Very, very true. I love that. Any last words you'd like to say?
I think people need a lot of kindness and compassion. I think that the more that I do this work, the more I see how unique people are and how every specific situation is different. And all my work with all my clients is totally customized because I feel like everybody is experiencing something that you just cannot put yourself in their shoes. You try, but people do need a lot of compassion and kindness. So I really encourage people to carry that through. And I would invite people to get to know the work that I'm doing. And the easiest way to do that is actually to sign up for my newsletter so that they can get to know me. I put out a newsletter twice a month. Every month I talk about the energy of the month from a Chinese astrology perspective, from a Feng Shui perspective, so that you can start to understand the kinds of tools that I'm using, the kinds of perspectives I take. And if any of this resonates, I always invite people to call me and have a discovery session so we can talk about what's working, what's not working, and seeing if any of the services that I offer are a good fit. And if there's a fit, then we can talk about moving forward. Yeah, that's the two things I think I wanted to say.
One thing that you're missing, and it's only one thing. Yes, you are.
Oh, how to find me? Where
there
do
you go.
Find
Thank
you? You can find me on You can find me at my website, fsinmotion.com. So my business is Feng Shui in Motion, and the website is fsinmotion.com. You can sign up for the newsletter there. I also have a blog, and you can get some information about the services that I offer in Feng Shui, Chinese astrology. I make personal calendars for my clients. Actually, the 2022 calendar is going to go on pre-order here in the fall very soon. So if people want to use the right timing for things that are happening in the next year, the calendar is a great way to do that. I do give presentations on Chinese New Year. So if you are curious about what next year has to offer, and the year changes in February. So people go, oh, I'm going to make new resolution in January when when it's the new year. And the energy actually changes in February. So things are not actually going to shift for another month. So I give presentations on Chinese New Year every year. I do classes on Chinese astrology and Feng Shui periodically throughout the year. You can also find me on social media. So I love to interact with people on social media, on Instagram, Feng Shui in Motion, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
There you go. Now you're not missing anything.
Great. I'm glad I didn't miss anything.
Jillian, it's been interesting to say the least. It's really
that's a good interesting.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. And I love it. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions most likely in the future. And hopefully everyone has learned something about Feng Shui that they've never learned before. So Jillian, it's been
a great conversation. Thanks for all your good questions. And I hope that we can do it again and talk about Chinese New Year.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I love that.
Yeah. Excellent. Take care.
Thank you.